Thank you very much for being here. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. You know, it's so great to do these because whoever isn't a friend here is a new friend, right? Thanks for coming today. Today, I want to tell you, New Ulm has a great reputation for dance bands, polka bands. In 1954, the centennial year, it was called Oompa Town. That's not what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about a different kind of bands that I call community bands. And community bands are the bands that march in parades. They're the bands that give concerts in the park, concerts at Turner Hall, at Union Hall in the past. And it's bands that often are supported by the community. The community pays to have those bands providing entertainment. And a lot of times we think of music as a matter of entertainment, but community bands also provide service to the community, not just entertainment. And I'll try to show you how the New Ulm Municipal Band does that, as well as some other bands as I talk about them. So these are the bands throughout the Brown County, Springfield, Evan, small towns, Sleepy Eye, Hanska, and if you think New Ulm has a reputation for music, just wait till I show you Hanska. Okay. And Sleepy Eye, and Springfield. Okay, so a year ago, actually 13 months ago, if you came to my popcorn wagon talk here at Lunch and a Bite of History, you maybe remember on that wall over there, we had an enlargement of this photograph. And if you want to look at it afterwards, you can go over there and do that. So this picture was taken on September 21st, 1917. This was when the United States had just gotten into World War I, or at that time it was called the Great War, because nobody knew it was World War I until there was a World War II. And on this picture, there's the popcorn wagon. That's why I showed it last year. And the band is why I'm showing it this year. This is Captain Joseph C. Hoffmeister. He was the leader of this band that was called the Hoffmeister Band, headquartered here in New Ulm. Behind him, these are what are called the exemption board. In World War II, we called it the draft board. And these are the people who decided which of the young men marching behind them from New Ulm and Brown County were going off to be trained to go into the war in Europe. Here you see the colors. Here you see colors hanging from the above the street. So these are the draftees, and they're going to get on the train at the depot here in New Ulm. They're going to go over to Mankato, and from there they're going to change trains to go to Camp Dodge, Iowa, near Des Moines, where they are going to be trained to go into the United States Army. Back here, you can see the officials of Sleepy Eye, the city fathers of Sleepy Eye, and behind them you can see a Sleepy Eye band. I don't know which band it was, but it was a Sleepy Eye band. And in white, in back, this is Red Cross workers. Red Cross was very important in New Ulm at that time in order to support both people here in our military, but also to support people in Germany and Austria, because they were so, they didn't have enough to eat, they didn't have enough clothes, and so they put packages together to mail over to Europe. So September 21st, it was a particularly important day in New Ulm's history and Brown County's history. Just 3 months before that, some of you have heard about the draft rally. In June 1917, there was a meeting up at Turner Hall in Turner Park, and thousands of people came together, and Mayor Louis Fritchie, the auditor of the county, Professor Adolf Ackerman from the college, spoke that day, and they said, we think that people in New Ulm should have the opportunity to volunteer if they're going to go over to Germany to fight against their fathers, their brothers, and their uncles. Okay. At the time, Minnesota had something called the Public Safety Commission. And so they literally had spies in New Ulm that day. And they listened to people downtown who were speaking German and heard what they were saying. And they were trying to find out who was promoting the anti-draft rally. So it was a very dark day in the history of New Ulm and Brown County. Now, the thing I mentioned before is that New Ulm is so famous. It has such a great reputation for dance music and polka music. And probably the person we think of the most when we think of dance music is Whoopi John Wilford. Okay? And these, Eddie Wilford is his brother. Stevers, Emil Domeyer is here. They're his cousins. This is a family affair. This is John Boom Boom Bauer. You can always tell because he had the tuba or the bass horn. And he came from Muttersdorf in Bohemia, where many of our ancestors come from. So if you think this was the beginning of music in New Ulm, it wasn't. It started much earlier. And here is an example of the Milford Band in 1907. Whoopi John was probably about 12 years old in 1907, and he got into radio and recording in the late 1920s, and that's what made him and his band so famous. When I talk about Milford Band, we're talking about a township, and there are many townships in Brown County, and it turns out that almost every township had a band at that time. There was a Lone Star Band in McCleary. You've never heard of McCleary, the town. You think it's auto parts. But McCleary is way down south, just east of Comfrey. It's close to the border between Brown and Watonwan counties. So that was the Lone Star Band. In that general area, there was also a North Star Band. There was a Linden Band, Golden Gate Band, Searles Band, Evan Band, Iberia Band, Comfrey Band. Comfrey, I don't have a lot for adult bands, but they did have what they called the Comfrey Band Moms, who helped to fund the high school band in Comfrey. And I remember as a kid going to Comfrey one day and hearing the high school band play in a parade there. There was an Albin Community Band, an Eden Band, a Mulligan Band, a Prairieville Band, a Siegel Band, and a Stark Band, and that's just the beginning of the list. So when music was just getting really started in our area, it wasn't so much what we call wind bands. Wind bands are instruments that you blow through, brass instruments, woodwind instruments. Here you see cornets, here you see a clarinet, that's a woodwind, cornet is brass. But you also see stringed instruments. Several people here have violins. And almost every band, whether you call it an orchestra, a wind band, a brass band, they almost always have percussion, drums. Here even you see a bass fiddle. So this was called the Gobler, Ludwig, and Mathiowitz Orchestra. Mathiowitz. Gobler, Ludwig, Mathiowitz Orchestra. In Springfield, the community band was the Orpheus Band. And here you see, very often you see a bass drum, and it has the name of the band on it. To do that, to paint the name of the band on it, was called drum art. And drum art was really new in about 1870s. And so this Orpheus Band, It started in, we know that it started as early as about 1916 and maybe even about 9 or 10 years earlier than that. We're going to come back to the Orpheus Band because in 1923, Joseph Huffmeister, Captain Huffmeister, who was here on that first picture leading the parade, he went from New Ulm, from the Huffmeister Band in New Ulm, to the Orpheus Band in Springfield. Another picture of the Orpheus Band. And here I want to show you something about the instruments. So, all right. Here, look at this instrument. This is a cornet. You can tell by the shape, especially how rounded that is. That's a cornet, that's a cornet. These are not trumpets, but they're very similar to cornets. And at this time, from about the Civil War until about the First World War, cornets were very common and very popular, and trumpets were not very popular, although they had been very popular in the early 19th century. When Louis Armstrong came along, he really liked the sound of the trumpet, and so the trumpet became much more popular. So today, you hardly ever see a cornet in a community band. You mostly see trumpets. So this is Captain Joseph C. Huffmeister. He was born in Bohemia, so he's among the ancestors called German Bohemians. He was born there in 1875. He immigrated to America and came directly to New Ulm. He married Anna Manderfeld. He had 3 children, Josephine, Hayden, Frank. Anna died, and then he married Marie Hockel. Marie Hockel was an opera singer in Europe. So there was music in the family. Together with Marie, he had sons Ludwig, Walter, Peter, Hugo, Otto, Theodore, and Anthony. 9 altogether. Okay. Families were big in those days. So Joseph Huffmeister was maybe the most accomplished musician that we've ever had in New Ulm and Brown County. He was a teacher of music. He taught all of his 9 sons to be professional musicians. He directed bands. He directed bands related to the Minnesota National Guard. He directed his own band called the Huffmeister Band. And in Springfield, he directed the Orpheus Band. He's been inducted, actually the entire Huffmeister family has been inducted into the Minnesota Music Hall of Fame. Here is Whoopi John Wilford is here. And you see 3 of the Huffmeister brothers in this picture. You see Ted, Hugo, and Otto. Frank, we also know, is also in the John Wilford Band. Okay. We're going to move from Springfield to Sleepy Eye now. This is Leo B. Schreckfer. His nickname is Pinky. He was a barber in Sleepy Eye. He was a very accomplished musician. He played briefly in the John Wilford Band, but he decided that he wanted to do his regular business as a barber. He composed many musical pieces, including one of his most famous was the Jubilesta March. He became the director in 1935 of the Sleepy Eye Drum and Bugle Corps. It was part of the American Legion Post 7 in Sleepy Eye. This is the Sleepy Eye Drum and Bugle Corps. You see Pinky Schreckfer. I think I'm getting a different picture from what you're seeing. Okay. Stand by for station identification. Well, I'll talk about Pinky Schreckfer and the Sleepy Eye Drum and Bugle Corps. Bugles and drums, that's what you have in a drum and bugle corps. You think of a bugle as a bugle, right? Now, there are at least 5 kinds of bugles. There's a bass bugle that looks like a tuba. There's a soprano tuba that looks like a little tin horn. And they all have their own range, and so together they create a harmony. And they have a very brilliant sound to them. Then you add the drums for percussion. They marched in parades. The Sleepy-Eyed Drum and Bugle Corps is known for competitions, bugle competitions in Minnesota, Chicago, St. Louis. And they took the first place in competitions over 20 times. They existed about 1928 until about 1970. So a lot of their, the greatest activity was before and after World War II. Okay, all right. Pinky Schrepfer has been inducted into the Minnesota Hall of Fame, and most of you know that that's just across the street. Their season is April through October, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturday. So when we're finished here, you may want to run over there. You only got a few more chances to do it this year. So this is a picture of the entire band with Pinky Schrepfer here. Does that remind you of any band that you know? Yeah, Shell's Hobo Band. This is the Sauerkraut Band. And this was early 1940s. And they're dressed up like clowns. And that's what the Shell's Hobo Band looks like. It turns out that Redwood Falls also had sauerkraut days for a celebration.
Hey Dan, what did that sign say? Springfield something?
Tiger Tutors.
Springfield Tiger Tutors.
Okay.
Ever drive by there and see that? Okay. Here are some uniforms. They're across the street at the Minnesota Music Hall of Fame. They're on display there. You could see them this afternoon. And you see 3 different uniforms of the Sleepy-Eyed Drum and Bugle Corps. The white with red, with green trim, green coat, white pants, and the blue. Ready to go to Hanska? This is the Lakeshore Band. Some of you remember Arlene Schmiesing. Arlene Blomquist Schmiesing. She put this book together. It's the Bible of music for Hanska. You can look at this afterwards if you like. These are, show you the Huffmeister family and Pinky Schrepfer for Music Hall of Fame. And almost every town has its own history book. Sleepy-Eye, Elizabeth Scobie, Essig. Essig isn't made of vinegar. And volume 1 wasn't enough to tell you about Essig. This is volume 2. The Ulm Public Library. I'm putting a plug for the whole neighborhood. This band started in 1906. This is a picture taken in 1927. And as late as 1959, they were continuing to meet weekly. The band was originally organized from the Linden Cornet Band. This is the Harmony Band of Hanska, 1923. Now, the president of this band was George Brudely, Brudeli, George Brudely. And he was a member of the Ulm Municipal Band as well. You all know who this is, Guy DeLeo. Guy DeLeo was a music teacher and a very accomplished musician. He was the director of a swing band. He played in ballrooms in New Ulm and elsewhere in Brown County. He was a teacher, a music teacher at Hanska High School. You've seen Sid and Jan DeLeo talk about the orphan train. He was an orphan, came here from New York City. And as he grew up, he lived with parents whose name was Utes, and so they called him Joseph J. Utes. As he started to develop his interest in bands, in musical bands, he tried different names. He tried J. Utes, he tried J.J. Utes, and he tried different band names. He tried the Italian Village Orchestra and the Arabian Nights. He was the first president of the local musicians union in 1937. He taught at Cathedral High School here in Ulm. Taught my wife chorus music. This is the Evan Cornet Band in 1905. Again, you see an example of drum art. Evan Cornet, Evan, Minnesota. And again, you see cornets here. Why am I focused on cornets? Why shouldn't I talk about this and this and this? Well, I played trumpet when I was a kid. And so it turns out that the cornet was a new instrument in the 1830s. I think I mentioned that already. I want you to look very carefully at this picture. This drum says New Ulm Silver Cornet Band. What do you think about it? There are no cornets. I had this picture on display over at Luca Books. I didn't realize there were no cornets in it. I better get a little disclaimer next year. So you can see this picture right over there, and it's pasted on a black piece of paper, and it's drawn in lead pencil, borrowed for the picture from the Silver Cornet Band. So a fife and drum corps borrowed this picture, borrowed this drum to have their picture taken. Okay, this is the Star Band. It started in 1884. I mentioned that the New Ulm Silver Cornet Band was New Ulm's first organized band similar to a community band. That was in 1878. So this Star Band in 1884, I want to just point out Wenzel T. Eckstein, who was the band leader. He was also a very gifted musician. He was the leader of the New Ulm Orchestra. He was educated as a lawyer, but he was more interested in being a court reporter, and he was so good at his job that judges always asked for him in their courtroom. This is the Concordia Band, organized in 1884. Now, I say 1884, but there are people who say it was 1880. I can only find proof that it was 1884. The Concordia Band was a community band. They marched in Independence Day parades, Memorial Day parades. Earlier it was called Decoration Day. They did concerts in the park. They did dances. So they were very versatile bands that played for many purposes. So here you can see the entertainment and the service. The service would be performing for Memorial Day, where our community comes together to remember our deceased and our veterans. This begins a new chapter, and this is the 2nd Regiment Band. This is a band that's part of the Minnesota National Guard. And this started in the late 1890s. This picture was taken at Camp Lakeview, where in the Minnesota National Guard, militaries changed from militias to the National Guard. The militia is volunteers where every able-bodied young man comes to the defense of the community in a crisis. In the National Guard, the soldiers are trained. And this is at an encampment. This is a 1 or 2 week time when the soldiers come together for training, to learn to march, to learn to drill, to do target practice. And they always had a band, so that in the evening, when they wanted to relax, they had a band for entertainment. And then this is at Camp Lakeview, which is on Lake Pepin on the Mississippi River. Now, this is Joseph Hofmeister, whom you've already met, and he was the leader of this band. And there are other people that we begin to identify here. This is Henry Kitzberger, and this is Peter Kitzberger the First. He's one of 3. Okay. Tell you more about them as we go. This is the 2nd Regiment Band. Notice here the uniforms. They have felt hats. They're not quite as formal as the uniforms are here. These are band caps. And they have cords. You're not going to wear that when you're in battle, but you'll wear that when you're entertaining. Again, you see cornets. This is in 1900. This is a little later.
I love that.
Sometime not too long, a few years after World War I, the Minnesota National Guard was reorganized, and what was previously known as the 2nd Regiment became known as the 205th Infantry. And so this is the 205th Infantry Band. This is Minnesota National Guard. It's not the United States Army. It's 1923, and this now is at Camp Ripley that we all know of today. This is Benjamin Kitzberger. He's a warrant officer, and he's the director holding the baton. Henry Kitzberger is here. And let's see. I don't think Peter Kitzberger is in this picture. You're going to hear about Peter Kitzberger again. Now, when World War II came along, anybody in the 205th Infantry Band who was eligible for induction into military service became part of the 215th Coastal Artillery Band. And so now you see even more people that you may recognize. Okay. Robert Eichten worked at Citizens Bank. He was the drum major. Leroy Slivers DeWans. Okay. I'll read out some other names. Other New Ulm names were Lonecker, LeWay, Windhorn, Wolf, Kraus, Adams, Preisinger, Heck, Eddie Heck. Eddie, where are you? Okay. I know he's there. I sat next to him in the municipal band in 1971. Don Weigel is here, from Weigel's Kaiserhof. Don is one of these guys in here. All right. Irick, Cayley. In New Ulm we say Cayley, elsewhere they say Kale. Weigel, Manderfeld, Pinker. Very familiar names. Here again, this is a dance band that was part of the 215th Coastal Artillery Band. Again, you see Slivers DeWans and others from New Ulm and Brown County. Now there were those who were not eligible for induction into the military service in 1941 at World War II. Some of them were too young, some of them were too old. Some of them were medically unable to be inducted. And so they formed a new band called the Pioneer Band. Actually, the Pioneer Band had been started in 1923, but it became inactive. Only the leaders would meet, not the entire membership and the musicians of the band. So it wasn't a new band in 1941, it was a reactivated band. So this is the Pioneer Band, and this picture was taken at the Brown County Fairgrounds in front of the 4-H building. It was taken on August 13th, 1942. And it continued until 1945, when the war was over and the New Ulm Municipal Band took over fairly soon. The next picture, I'm going to warn you, is kind of fuzzy, but it's one of my favorite pictures. And I asked for some special people to be here today to see this. Okay. This is a concert that's being performed at Turner Hall, March 30th, 1941. It's the first concert of the Pioneer Band. And there's a guest conductor here. This is Carl L. King. Carl L. King is one of the most famous bandmasters of the first half of the 20th century. He was the leader of the municipal band in Fort Dodge, Iowa. He had very little formal musical education, but he played in a circus band where he developed his musical skills. He wrote many marches, many of which are played today in the municipal band in New Ulm. And when the New Ulm Municipal Band was formed in 1946, he was consulted in how to put it together. This is my first picture of the New Ulm Municipal Band, and this is on the stage which at the time was New Ulm High School, now it's State Street Theater. And this was taken in about 1950, we're not sure the exact date. So the municipal band is a band that does entertainment. As you know, it plays in the parks, free concerts in the parks during the summertime. You see it at New Ulm's festivals, Bavarian Blast, Herman Fest, formerly Heritage Fest. And it's a service band. It plays at the cemetery on Memorial Day. It performs a salute to the armed forces 3 times each summer. This is Peter Kitzberger I in a uniform. This uniform was used by the Pioneer Band. It was the uniform you saw on the previous picture, but it was also used by the New Ulm Municipal Band in the first few years. This is a piccolo that Peter Kitzberger used. His nickname was Piccolo Pete. Maybe you've heard that. This is in the archives of the Brown County Historical Society. Peter Kitzberger's wife donated after he had died. On Memorial Day, this is the municipal band. You see the director here is Don Yermak. Here's the band. You see a male chorus, the Concord Singers. You see the color guard, the veterans who bring the flags to the ceremony. What you don't see, but you hear when you're here, is the military salute. In most towns, the military salute on Memorial Day is done with rifles. In New Ulm, it's done with cannons. Nobody knows any other place where it's done with cannons. The New Ulm Battery that owns the cannons is like the municipal band. It's supported by the city of New Ulm. And I could do a whole talk on the New Ulm Battery. Maybe I'll do that next year. Okay. Here is the saxophone section of the New Ulm Municipal Band. One of my favorite pictures. I just love the glint of the sun off of the saxophones. Carolyn Marty gave me this picture. Thank you, Carolyn. Here's the New Ulm Municipal Band playing one of its free concerts at German Park in the summertime. Here you can see the old bandstand with the foundation that's made out of boulders. That was put together in 1914. And many of the bands I've shown you, the New Ulm bands, have played here. The military bands, the Second Regiment, the 205th Infantry, the municipal band have all played at German Park. There are several people, musicians, performing with the New Ulm Municipal Band here. Mary Lund is with us today. Thanks for being here, Mary. Chris Runk is here. This is Don Wilford. Don died just a few years ago. He was in the New Ulm Municipal Band for 76 years. I'm not even that old. Yeah, he was a charter member. Okay. I'll let you absorb that for a moment. Another Carolyn Marty picture. Thank you, Carolyn. So here you see the New Ulm Municipal Band. Don, you're up. This is Don Wilford with sunglasses on. Here's the New Ulm Battery. You see the smoke from the cannon fire. And this is Bryce Stenzel, who's a Abraham Lincoln reenactor who comes to many of our performances. This is at Riverside Park. And a piece that we play is the 1812 Overture, written by Tchaikovsky in the 19th century. And in that piece, he calls for cannons to be fired as a form of percussion. So you hear the cannons repeatedly towards the end of the overture. You also hear church bells. And one year in New Ulm, 6 churches rang their bells as the New Ulm Municipal Band was playing the 1812 Overture and the New Ulm Battery was firing the cannons. Wouldn't you like to do that again sometime? Yeah. For me personally, that piece, that performance is the most exciting, the most exhilarating. And it's the last thing we play every season now. And when that last strain ends, it's all over. This is at Harmon Park, where the New Ulm Municipal Band is in the foreground and the battery. There are actually several batteries besides the New Ulm Battery who participate at that time. The National Guard that's headquartered here in New Ulm is the 125th Field Artillery of the Minnesota National Guard. Don't you think that it's cool that we've had a battery in New Ulm since 1863? A battery, artillery. And now we still have the New Ulm Battery and the 125th Field Artillery. New Ulm has a great tradition for music. It also has a great tradition for the military. Okay. This, Adam Tolles, who took this picture, told me this is called Dragon's Breath. The illumination that comes out of the cannon as it fires. And here, this is Don Wilford.
Oh, yeah.
This is the last concert he played. The municipal band went to Germany in 2000. Here they're placed in front of the Ulmer Minster, the Ulm Cathedral. During that same trip, they visited Detmold, where the Hermann Monument is in Germany. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to wrap up and then take questions, see if there's some interesting discussion. I always try to not tell you everything because what I tell you might be boring. And if if you have a chance to tell me your questions, then I know that you're interested. So, Christina will be up here afterwards to take orders. We'd be very grateful for anybody who's interested. There will be opportunities to purchase the book once it's printed. We'll have at least 3 places in New Ulm where you can do that. But if you can purchase one today, we can use that money to defray the costs of printing. Over there you see the cover of the band, the way it's going to look. You can see the title of the book. Nice to Be a Musician, History of the New Ulm Municipal Band. Christina will be up here to take orders, and I'll have a chance to talk with people who want to come up and talk personally. 2026 is a special year. It's the semi-quincentennial of the United States. Quincentennial means 500. Semi is half of that, so 250 years. So we're going to celebrate the municipal band's anniversary in the semi-quincentennial of the United States. So I always like to say thank you to people who've helped me with my project and putting this presentation together. And you know, whenever you make a list, you can't make it long enough. There's only just that much space, but you know what? In reality, you also forget some people, right? I've been working on this for over 1.5 years, and so many people have helped me, and I'm very grateful. I would like to personally thank Don Urach, who's the director of the New Ulm Municipal. Don and his wife Sarah have been very supportive to me. When I sit here in the band, Sarah sits here. And so I'm constantly saying, Sarah, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And if I'm not saying that to her, she says, Dan, you should know about this. You should know about that. So I've learned incredibly amount of music from Don and Sarah, and among my biggest supporters. Another that isn't on the list is Dan Hoisington. Many of you know, and you may have his books. They've been very helpful to me in my research. And he's been personally very helpful to me in my book project. I do have other pictures, and so as you raise your questions, I may have other pictures to point to help answer them, but very grateful for your being here today. Good to see friends and new friends. Thank you.